So I thought we could talk tonight about what are you looking for? Right? This is actually a topic suggested by a friend of ours, and I thought it was a good topic because everyone seems to be looking for something, right? In that sense, you could say that everyone's a seeker, right? Seeking after something to resolve just an underlying sense. It doesn't even have to be overt, although it may be that also, but an underlying sense of lack. Not quite enough. Something's not quite right. Insufficient. Inadequate somehow. Some sense that, yes, this moment is nice. My life so far has been, maybe good. Maybe we feel it's been difficult or whatever our assessment is. But there's a sense of it could be better. No matter how good it's been up till this point, there's always a sense, well, it could be better. And so, and this is not true just for spiritual people. I mean, everyone's a seeker. I mean, whether we're seeking, out of, the trying to resolve this sense of lack or inadequacy or anxiousness, restlessness, trying to resolve that through power, money, fame. We can also try to satisfy it through food and drink, satisfy it through drugs. Sex and stimulation is often high on the list. Adventure, maybe just contentment and comfort, playing it safe is what we're after. Maybe the next idea, the next mental stimulation, that will do it, that will resolve everything. Then we may happen into spirituality and we think, I know now, enlightenment, that'll do it, right? But what all of these things have in common is all of them, including this longing for this concept of enlightenment, what they all have in common is I want to improve my sense of well-being. My sense of pleasurable existence, however we might choose to define that. So in that sense, this pursuit of enlightenment is still the same game. It's still the same game as, I want, power, money, wealth, fame, whatever, acquisition of material goods, to fill this sort of inner incompleteness. Like I say, it might not be that overt, but there's something that's motivating this search for more, this search for improvement, the search for wanting, longing. And we think, but enlightenment, now we're getting somewhere. This is closer to what will really resolve this issue. But the motivation is still the same source. It's like wanting a better experience for this organism. That's basically it. It's basically it for whatever our mode of search is. So, the idea that somehow, we're special because we're on a spiritual path can be every bit as much of a trap, and maybe even a more subtle and therefore hard to detect path than these other, more overt materialistic paths. Okay, so we shouldn't feel too high and mighty about, seeing ourselves as being on the spiritual path instead of all those other folks out there. But all the while we're doing this, there's a sense of vulnerability, right? There's a sense of, I'm doing this to, improve my sense of well-being, my sense of my experience, and I'm getting there. I'm gradually making things better. I'm working towards that. But all the while, there's a sense of vulnerability, like somehow, what we're defending and improving is this sense of me, this sense of separate self. We could say egoic self as long as, we don't imagine that there's actually an ego in there somewhere. What we tend to call ego is just this collection of thoughts and experiences and memories and hopes and dreams and fears and regrets and sensations and perceptions, etc., all wrapped together, and it seems complex enough, moving from one thing to the next all the time, that the presumption is, therefore, there must be someone in charge there, right? We presume that there is, and we call that me, right? So this whole effort to improve, to seek, to look for something that's outside of our self is in service to what? Right? It's in service to this concept that we have that there is a separate self. There is a separate self independent from the rest of existence. Yes, we have to eat and breathe and things, but basically what I am is an autonomous being that thinks what I choose to think and do what I choose to do, and basically master of my own ship. Right? But even as we hold that as a concept, this sense of personal, autonomous, separate entity somewhere, managing all these experiences, there's still a doubt there. There's still a vulnerability. There's still a sense that I don't quite know where that solid ground is. Is that not true? That if it were true, if we knew that we were independent, solid, we wouldn't be affected if someone slighted us, someone said something negative about us. But our sense of self-worth is so vulnerable that just even an odd glance, or someone not returning our email sufficiently quickly, or whatever, we can take personally. We can be hurt. We can be somehow diminished, and so we're in this constant flux of trying to defend and enhance this personal self, and at the same time, there's often things that happen that tend to diminish it, right? Make me feel less worthy, less lovable, less adequate, less relevant. So this sense of personal self, as much time and energy as we spend promoting it, defending it, polishing it, improving it, there's still a sense of, yeah, and it still feels on shaky ground, right? And one of the things that happens is that there can arise just this sense of sort of anxiety or restlessness or boredom is popular. This sense of, wanting more, that whatever the present moment is not enough. It's almost like there's an ogre living in the basement, and every once in a while it's coming up the stairs and it wants to get fed. And how it announces its presence is through the sense of restlessness or boredom or anxiety, for no particular reason, but just that underlying sense. And like I say, it doesn't have to be, overt terror. It can be just a subtle, sense of insufficiency. And what we hope for is that, we'll find something to keep this, ogre at bay, something sufficiently stimulating that we can feed it that experience or that thought or that memory or that piece of junk food or whatever, to keep it at bay a while longer. But there's always that sense of, it will rise up again. And our solution for that is to be on the lookout for something sufficiently pleasurable to resolve once and for all this sense of lack. Right? Something so commanding, so powerful that we don't have to keep feeding it little morsels or bits or maybe huge meals, but knowing that it'll be back. Right? So we imagine, well, what can I imagine? What can I do? What can I work towards that'll sort of resolve this once and for all? And the interesting thing to notice is that permanent resolution is never in the past. It's also never in the present. All right? It's always in the future. Hasn't happened yet, but... And then, the concept of enlightenment is a great placeholder, right? Enlightenment, now that'll solve this. Some experience so mind-blowing, so powerful that it will basically get me permanently high. Bliss, eternal bliss. I had this image of outside some ashram somewhere, the residents of the ashram protesting out and past the front gate, carrying placards, and someone with the bullhorn, shouting, "What do we want?" And the people with the placards would say, "Eternal bliss." "When do we want it?" "Now." Protest march. But that's essentially what we feel, right? That's what we want, eternal bliss. When do we want it? Now. And that's what we seek. Something not here, not now, of course, but something in the future, something so spectacular that will permanently resolve this sense of not enough. Right? But every time we manage to get something that we were hoping to resolve it, maybe it was just the quart of ice cream, but maybe it was the next adventure, the next relationship, the new house, the new kitchen, the new car, the whatever. Every time we get that, it feels good. Yeah. The wanting drops away for a short time, And then the wanting gradually comes back. And we look for something else. So the question is, how many times is Lucy going to pull that particular football away from us, just as that wanting that we hoped would be satisfied is finally achieved, and then it's not lasting. It's like that carrot that sort of always recedes, that we keep chasing. So how long are we willing to continue to chase that carrot? How long are we going to be willing to believe that that football will be there when we go to kick it? How many times do we have to have that experience that whatever we believed would fulfill this sense of lack permanently, never does? A promise that's never kept. Can feel good for a while, but that wanting will come back. That ogre in the basement will come back up again and want more. Different, better, bigger, more exciting. So as long as we're looking for something, we're still looking to the outside. We're looking in a direction that we will never find it, ever. We might find a lot of things, might have lots of great adventures, be able to tell our friends. But until we dare to turn around and ask the question, I wonder, in whose service am I doing all this seeking, in whatever form it is? And we can see that all of it is still in the service of this separate conceptual self. And that separate self continues to, we continue to believe the existence of it primarily by never questioning it. No, it's not even an assumption, because we never doubted its non-existence. We've always just taken it as a fact of life that what I am is separate from everything else. Nobody ever told us differently. Actually, people quite encouraged us to be independent, strong, think for yourself. All of that's fine at a certain level, until we go looking for what we truly are. So it's never that we decided at some point that we were going to imagine ourselves to be a separate, independent entity, sort of apart from life. We never consciously decided it. We never even considered it. So I'm just suggesting at this point, wherever we are in our life, that, maybe we could consider that. I wonder if that's actually true. It doesn't do any good, by the way, to believe that, oh, okay, I guess that's true. I'll go with that. That's just adopting another concept for some personal benefit, right? If I adopt the concept that I really don't have a self, then, I'll be more spiritually advanced than the next person. So this isn't about concept A or concept B. It's about what's actually true. And the good news is that we don't have to depend on anybody to tell us that. it may be helpful, when we hear a suggested direction of inquiry, that might be helpful. But for someone just to state as fact that, there is no such thing as a personal, independent, autonomous self, to say that's really meant as a pointer for investigation. The good news is that you have the power totally within yourself to find out whether that statement is true or not. Doesn't do any good. It's actually counterproductive to believe that that's a true statement. Much, much more useful just to ponder it, like, I wonder if that's possibly true. I think I'll go looking for who I am, right? So when we do that, we can find all kinds of things, right? We can find, memories and thoughts and opinions and dreams and unmet desires and sensations and feelings and perceptions, and all of that we can find. But what all of those things have in common is that none of them have independent existence. They're all arisings within consciousness. None of them have the quality of a personal self. Let's just take, let's just take the sensation of hearing. We hear a sound. There's the recognition. The organism, receives that vibration, interprets it, labels it. But there's no self in it. It's just an experience. So sometimes when we hear this about, no self, it might be intriguing, like, well, if there's no self, then, all these conditionings that I'm not all that happy about wouldn't be a problem. There's this, maybe a sense of a certain freedom, possibly, if we feel into it. But at the same time, if we're honest with ourselves, we're saying, I'm not sure that's a good idea, right? There's no self. And I'd suggest the reason for that is it's the mind trying to scare itself by equating no self with non-existence. If I didn't hold on to this concept of me tightly, who would I be? Right? I wouldn't know who I was. That's true. You wouldn't. But what you discover is that what we're holding on so tightly is just a misperception. It's a misperception of what we essentially are. It's not a denial that, the body exists. It's not a rejection of the mind, or the thinking mind is often portrayed as the bad guy in spirituality. It's not really that at all. The body will continue, the mind will continue for a while. But it's not essentially what we are. It's what we function through and as, but it's not essentially who we are. So what we discover, it's not the loss of self. It's the loss of this concept of a personal, separate self. It's the loss of a misperception, a mischaracterization of what we are. So we find out that we actually never were a self. So it's not like we're actually giving up anything that we had. We're giving up a concept. We don't do it willingly, of course, because everything about our mental structure is hanging on for dear life. But what we find that we actually are is much bigger, much vaster. As this awareness which has no boundary, no limit, in its capacity to receive everything. So that's what we discover. We give up a misperception and discover what we essentially are. So there's still a sense of self. It's just defined much, much differently. It's not a personal self. It's just, it's more like the one self appearing as this particular body-mind. That's why in Advaita they talk about the self with a small s and self with a big S. Right? The big S self isn't a new and improved version of this. It's actually the recognition of the one self that is functioning through and as all of us, all beings, actually. So this idea of a separate self, the reason that it feels so ingrained, well, it's been there for a long time, unquestioned, right, unexamined, and because it's unexamined, we've sort of even lost sight of it. We just presume that, what our experience is, what we see, what we think, what we feel, and even when someone points out this capacity of awareness, that capacity which we all have, it's all functioning just fine, but it's become so fused with the experience that even when it's pointed out, it's like we say, where? Where? I don't see it, I don't get it. But it's a little bit like being shown a white piece of paper, and in the middle of it there's let's say a black dot, and you ask someone, what do you see? And they say, well, I see a small black dot. And then you might ask, well, what else do you see? And most people say nothing. That's all there is, that black dot there. And it's not that their eyeballs don't receive the image of the sheet of paper, but it's like that on which it is, the image is present, is ignored. It's a little bit like when we go to the movies. We're totally engrossed in the movie and the action and the characters, etc., and the play of light on the screen. But we don't remember that it's a play of light and that there's a blank screen there, and that's the reality of it. If we did, we wouldn't enjoy the movie very much. So we suspend our disbelief and believe that what we're actually seeing is real life. Otherwise, we wouldn't enjoy the movie. So if we're at a movie that we don't really care for, or we don't really want to be there, then we can remember that, well, it's just a blank screen and some lights playing on it. And that's what it actually is. But we do the same thing with awareness. We forget all about the context in which all of this content appears. We forget about the screen of awareness and remember just the content. So this effort in spirituality is just to look often enough and carefully enough to notice the perceptions and the events, etc. So we don't have to waste our time trying to change any of that or improve any of that. Just notice that, yes, that's all happening. We're not denying any of it. We're not claiming that the world doesn't exist, etc. Just doesn't exist how we imagine it to exist. It exists and presents itself within this field of awareness. So we can just keep coming back to the awareness rather than the content. And it can show up concurrent with spectacular visions and events and all kinds of explosive activities. It can be concurrent with that, but it's actually not the experience itself. It's what reveals itself that may be accompanied by spectacular events, but doesn't need to be. Right? And often we can miss it by expecting it to look spectacular. Right? If we're expecting it to look spectacular and shows up quite ordinarily, like, oh, there's awareness, okay. Wow. We might miss it. We might not value it. And if things do show up in a spectacular fashion, we might assume that the awakening is the fireworks and not what is revealed to be our essential nature. But when that essential nature is shown to us, however it's shown, and there's no rule about it, it can show up however it does, and we can hopefully be grateful when it does. But it's just a reality revealing itself. It's our true nature revealing itself to itself is what it actually is. So when that is revealed, one of the hallmarks of it is that sensation of seeking out of lack drops away. It's not actually that the awakening has fulfilled those desires, given us something so precious that it's satisfied all of our wanting and longing. It's that the whole movement out away from ourselves is seen as an illusion. It's seen as not what is valuable. What is seen as valuable is just that which we already are. That's the most surprising thing about it. That's actually the most hilarious thing about it, that we seek and seek and seek outwardly, and what's doing all the seeking was there all along, present for every moment of it, every episode, every drama, every up, every down. It is what notices the whole arising. Right? So what there can be after awakening, there can be this extended period of what feels like bliss. It is bliss. It feels really good, right? It can feel like that for an extended period of time, and we try to stretch out that time as long as possible because it feels good, right? But eventually it settles into something that could more accurately be called contentedness. Which isn't, contentedness doesn't have the marketing power that, eternal bliss has. But that's what it actually resolves into, is a sense of contentedness, which is very nice. The Taoists would call it our natural state. So it's not a whacked out, hyper blissful high state. Anything that's, so any elevated state has the potential to come back down again, just like any drug trip, right? Any binge. There can be high moments, but if that's what we're trying to hold on to, then we're still grasping after what? Grasping after personal experience. For who? For me. We're back in ego land again, right? What is valuable, what is essential, is this sense of whatever appears within this field of awareness that we all essentially are. It's okay. It's okay. I may, of course, prefer this over that, but whatever shows up, I'm okay with. Knowing that life will not always look like this. The home team won't always win. It's not how life works. So we just come into alignment with how life actually works, and we're good with that. We're actually bowled over with gratitude for being able to experience that full spectrum of experience, that full unfolding of life in its immensity, and gratitude for being able to be present for all of it, right? All the good stuff, even all the difficult stuff. What Ramana said something interesting about this sense of contentedness. He says this: the awareness, after a while, when it, so everything sort of settles into its natural place, that the awareness feels more like the bass in a song and not the treble. You'd notice if the bass suddenly disappeared, right? But generally, we're focused on the melody. Bass is still present, still in the background, but our attention may be directed outwardly, whatever's the most interesting thing at the moment. The awareness is still fully present. We may be lost in, dreaming about, vacation next month. But awareness is fully present for that as well. And then the next moment we might come back to the recognition of, yes, still here, still exist, still a I amness, still awareness within which all of this is happening. So it's not even holding on to a certain perspective, efforting that way. If we really realize that, that the awareness is always present, what are we holding on to? What are we grasping? What are we trying to manage? Who is trying to be the manager? Who's trying to do it right? When we can see that the awareness is present, whether our attention is focused outward or back into awareness itself, and allow that flow to happen, there's a relaxation, because we're no longer trying to control it. We're no longer trying to manage our experience. We're just present for whatever experience happens. If we're always coming back to, am I doing it right now? Am I being, present from spacious awareness now? that movement of self-reflection. Am I doing it right? Am I getting better? We're still in this movement of self-improvement, trying to have the right experience, trying to work our way up. And that may go on for a while, as we notice this movement back and forth. That movement back and forth will continue, to feel like a dissonance, as long as we insist on trying to manage it. When we relax about it, it settles down. It's the same with the thoughts in our head. As long as we are trying to manage them, quiet our mind, think the right thoughts, as long as we're doing that, we'll keep the mind activated. And the mind loves that. The mind will do that the rest of our life if we give it that energy. What diffuses the sort of annoying qualities of the mind, that persistent, repetitive kind of quality. What diffuses that is indifference. It's not, we're just not going to, the end of the rainbow just isn't there in conceptual thought. It can't be. Because reality isn't a concept. It's, if we understand that, then we can just relax this incessant thinking about, am I doing it right? Am I getting closer? Right? And where we can relax back into is just this simple sense of being, just this resting back into awareness without trying to manipulate whatever's appearing within that field. And we can just come back into that sense of awareness, whether or not there's thought present, whether or not there's a busy mind, whether or not there's something that we like happening or not. We can just come back to rest in that awareness of whatever it is happening. So one of the things that we can, there's several things that we can notice about this awareness. One is it's not biodegradable. Right? Everything else about us is, right? Bodies, certainly, memories, capacities, all of it. Awareness is in a different category, right? Because it's not a thing. It's not something that we can objectify. We try to do that, of course, try to turn it into a concept, but it's not. We can be it. We just can't look at it. We can act from it. So it's of a different quality. It's a dimensionless capacity to receive, to recognize, to be present for everything, the whole world. Okay, the other thing is that awareness is the one thing that is not subject to the laws of impermanence. Again, everything else is, and yet this awareness is as it is. Once we recognize it, once we sense into the solidity of it, I mean, I know it can feel sort of an ephemeral and maybe even a philosophical concept for a while, but when we really sense into it, it is more solid than anything, more solid than the stable. Because it is always present, always available, always, I use the word intimate, implying, really, really close, but it's, not even two things, so you can't say, I am intimate with awareness. No, that would be incorrect. That which we essentially are is awareness. So it's not like I see awareness. It's like I am awareness that is present for whatever, for everything. So it's the one thing that isn't subject to impermanence, isn't subject to coming and going, isn't subject to all of this outward movement. It'll be present for it. It'll watch us doing it. It'll watch us chase enlightenment for as long as it takes. And that's the funny part. We will see that it was there all along, every step of the way. The awareness that we were seeking was what was seeking. But we didn't see it because we were looking in the other direction. We were looking out for fulfillment, not here, not now, but sometime in the future, of course, by some experience. And when we look out, we miss what's already present. That's how we miss it. We're not looking in the right direction. So it's really, the real spiritual inquiry actually starts, no matter how many years we've been doing this, the real inquiry starts when we ask who is looking, not what am I looking for. What am I looking for is still egoic searching. So that's when we turn around. That's actually the beginning, however long it takes to get there, that's actually the beginning of the true sort of coming home phase. What is it that's actually looking, seeking, wanting, longing for? Who is that? So what we find, ultimately, this ogre in the basement that was causing us so many problems is actually what Source uses to, drive us to, nudges us to look more deeply at what this life is really about. It's actually that source of longing that we took as being sort of a, almost an annoyance, anxiety-producing, helpless kind of wanting feeling, turns out to be a source nudging us homeward. So in the end, we recognize that a sense of gratitude towards this illusion. Without the illusion, we'd never appreciate that which we eventually find. Without first getting lost, finding ourselves to be what we truly are, wouldn't really have any deep meaning. It's like Source playing hide and seek with itself. Gets well hidden, and then we spend a lifetime, perhaps, or less, hopefully, finding ourselves. And then there's great joy when we do.